Good day everyone, I'm Faroshalini daughter of Madhya again. Today, I would like to present on the topic Bisphenol A in food packaging. First of all, what is Bisphenol A? Bisphenol A is also known as BPA. BPA is an industrial chemical used to make polycarbonate, a hard clear plastic which is used in many consumer products. BPA is also found in epoxy resin which acts as a protective lining on the inside of some metal-based food and beverage cans. BPA is widely used in food container. Do you know why? It is because BPA is used to make a strong, shatter-resistant polycarbonate plastic that provides a clear view of food in a durable and heat-resistant containers. They are reusable and help to keep food fresh. However, there are a lot of arising issues in the usage of BPA in food packaging. A study shows a link between canned food exposure to hormone distributing chemical, which is BPA. Next, most of the tests of canned food brand reveals that it has a controversial chemical in chemical lining. All the issues lead to a strict ban of BPA in food packaging. The usage of BPA are epoxy-based resin used in can lining, food cans such as soup and vegetables, beverage cans such as soda, juice or beer, lid with linings such as glass jar lids, bottle caps, for plastic water bottles, plastic baby bottles, canned food and plastic food packaging. But how does the BPA get into food from the food packaging? This is because BPA is soluble. This means when it comes in contact with the food or with the liquids. When it is heated, the bond it has formed with the plastic can be broken and BPA can seep into the content of your food or beverage. There are few exposure routes of BPA into our body, such as gastrointestinal tract and respiratory tract. The detection of BPA in our body can be determined by the biological samples. The exposure of BPA gives effect to our body. Firstly, reproductive disorder. BPA is an endocrine disruptor. It can imitate the body's hormones and it can interfere with the production, secretion, transport, action, function, and elimination of natural hormones. BPA can behave in a similar way to estrogen and other hormones in the human body. In 2013, a research published showing that BPA exposure can affect egg maturation in humans. In this journal, there was a dose-response association of BPA exposure with altered human oocytes maturation in vitro to determine if exposure of BPA really affects the maturation of human oocytes in vitro. In the end of the research, it concluded that as the BPA dose increased, there was an increase in the percentage of oocytes that progressed to the metaphase 2 and increase in the percentage of oocytes that were degenerated. Among metaphase 2 oocytes, as the BPA dose increased, there was a significant trend for the decreased incidence of bipolar spindles and allied chromosome. Next, a review of a study published in 2015 found evidence that BPA can interfere with endocrine function involving in the hypothalamus and pituitary gland. It proves that this type of action can affect puberty and ovulation, which may lead to infertility. Ovary, uterus, and other reproductive organs are also targets of BPA. BPA exposure impairs the structure and function of female reproductive system in different times of life cycle and may contribute to infertility. The research states that the detrimental effects of reproduction may be lifelong and transgenerational. As a summary of the journal, animal studies has demonstrated that BPA can affect female fertility by directly altering reproduction-related gene expression as well as impacting the epigenetic modification. A recent study on 6th May 2020 presents a solution for this issue, where the study shows that administering coenzyme Q10 reverses the damage done to the germinative cells by BPA, a contaminant found in many kinds of plastics. Lastly, male impotence may be affected. According to a study that looked at the effect of men's exposure to BPA at work, Findings indicate that high level of exposure may increase the risk of erectile dysfunction and problem with sexual desire and ejaculation. An occupational cohort study was conducted to examine the effect of occupational exposure to BPA on the risk of male sexual dysfunction. The workers were exposed to a very high level of BPA levels in their workplace. Male sexual function was ascertained through in-person interview using a standard male sexual function inventory. A dose-response relationship was observed with an increasing level of cumulative BPA exposure associated with a high risk of sexual dysfunction. Furthermore, compared with the unexposed worker, BP and BPA exposed worker, it was reported significantly where the workers with a high level of BPA exposure have a higher frequency of reduced sexual function within 1 year of employment in the BPA exposed factory. Secondly, the effect is heart disease. Research has linked even low dose of BPA exposure to cardiovascular problems, including coronary artery heart disease, angina, heart attack, hypertension, and peripheral artery disease. In the journal, the finding states that this type of exposure could trigger arteriosclerosis and blood pressure changes. Thirdly, it will affect the fetal brain development. Environment exposure to BPA has the potential to affect the developing brain during gestation. According to the research, the impact includes changes in the structural development, interference with estrogen regulation, DNA modification. This could have on social behavior and anxiety after birth. Fourthly, it may cause breast and prostate cancer. Scientists believe BPA with its estrogen-like behavior could increase the risk of breast, prostate, and other cancers in people who are exposed to it in the womb. In 2015, a group of researchers concluded that fetal exposure to BPA could lead to a long-lasting effects on the carcinogenesis of certain organs, potentially leading to the development of hormone-related cancers. Scientists have also found that BPA could interfere with the effectiveness of chemotherapy in breast cancer treatment. The study shows that the research on the potential health effects of BPA has focused on the chemical's ability to mimic or block natural estrogen. In animal studies, prenatal exposure to BPA increased susceptibility to mammary cancer in adulthood. A new cell culture study is the first to show how the BPA at concentration comparable to those found in the general population reduces the efficiency of chemotherapy drugs in breast cancer cells. Finally, it may cause asthma. A systematic review published in 2016 found that exposure to BPA before birth increases the symptoms of wheezing and asthma, especially if it is occurred during the second trimester. The method of analysis was the PubMed database was systematically searched, and additional studies were found by searching reference list of relevant articles. As a result, 6 studies fulfilled the eligible criteria. 3 studies found that prenatal BPA exposure is associated with an increased risk of childhood wheeze, while another study reported a reduced risk of wheeze. Regarding the postnatal BPA exposure, 3 studies demonstrated an increased risk of childhood asthma. As a conclusion, the mean prenatal BPA was associated with the risk of childhood asthma. BPA exposure can cause a lot of effects to human body. Therefore, we should avoid or minimize the exposure of BPA. It is difficult to avoid BPA because it is so prevalent in the environment, but there are some ways to minimize the exposure. First, check for a BPA-free label on the food and packaging. Buy and store food in glass jar instead of plastic. Use fresh, frozen and dried products and not a canned food. Avoid microwaving food in a plastic container. Do not wash plastic containers in a dishwasher or a harsh detergent on them. choose wooden toy instead of plastic, and finally, breastfeed the babies instead of using a feeding bottle. Thank you.